Oh, hi Karla, how are you?
Hugo, how are you?
Good. I'm really happy that you're here with me and Destino today. I really wanted to talk about and celebrate your work on Bob Hart Abishola. So,
Oh, thank you for having me.
yeah, of course. Are you able to start with your name and what you do?
Sure, it's Karla Stevens Flanigan, and I work as a costume designer for film and television.
Yeah, and specifically your experience on Bob Hart Abishola, how was it like for you to explore that culture and those characters?
That was one of my favorite shows that I've ever worked on because it allowed me to design costumes for a culture that I had never done before. Well, A, had never done before, but also didn't know a lot
Yeah,
about. And so when you work designing costumes and working on any show, you want to make sure that you're designing the characters properly, that you understand their history, where they've come from, um, what their character is.
yeah.
And specifically, this was about the Nigerian culture.
Mhm.
Um, and it's such a beautiful culture, and the clothing is so beautiful. The challenge I had on that was trying to find Nigerian costumes in Los Angeles
Yeah, I can
that
imagine.
were contemporary. You can go into the rental houses. And so, as a costume designer, we have in Los Angeles specifically, and in the bigger cities, we have costume rental houses that we often go to that
Right.
have period costumes, specialty costumes, contemporary, all of that. But to find contemporary Nigerian was a real challenge.
Yeah.
And I just started Googling, Nigerian clothing in Los Angeles, and we found, a store or two, and particularly one tailor that just basically custom made the clothing, which is very common. In the Nigerian culture, just to have things custom made, and they have their fabrics that they have flown over. So that was a little challenging because all of a sudden I had this huge show with thirteen
Yeah.
characters, 10 of who needed to be in Nigerian costumes. And so that was challenging out of the gate. But as we got into the stores and met people, then they would refer us. And Etsy is a beautiful website to go to for that kind of stuff. And Amazon, all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's like a million stores that sell this beautiful clothing.
Yeah.
It became really fun because we really started to get all the clothing in and the head wraps, and really started to have fun with it. And also, again, it was a contemporary show, so we wanted to make sure that what we were doing was accurate for this time in history. So super, super good time.
Yeah, exactly. And then as well as you guys did so many seasons and you also had to cover like everyday clothing and then as well as like the weddings and stuff like that. So it was a variety of looks that you had to cover.
Yeah, a variety of looks. And the other characters on the show, Billy Gardell's character was a sock salesman from Detroit.
Yeah.
We had his family. So we had both cultures, which was really great in terms of how beautiful it looked on camera and the different color palettes. And the Nigerian culture is very colorful, lots of pinks and yellows and acid greens and golden yellows and burnt oranges, and just a beautiful palette. And then we had the salesman, the Billy's
Yeah.
character was like a Detroit salesman, and just suits and darker tones. Their family was very dark in terms of the comedy and whatnot. So we
Yeah.
kept their palettes a little darker. So we had this really nice balance of the dark costumes and then the really bright Nigerian costumes. So that was a lot of fun to do that, and especially the dinner scenes when we'd have both families at a dinner table where all 13 of them would be, to really see the difference in characters. And the wedding was magnificent. I
Yeah.
think one of the hardest shows I've done in my history as a costume designer. And that required again tremendous amount of research. We had costumes flown in from Nigeria specifically for that. We had about 4 weeks to pull that together, which
Yeah.
was a huge challenge. But we had to make sure that all of the family costumes matched. That's what they do in the Nigerian culture. And for weddings in particular, the more elaborate, the better.
Yeah.
And so we really tried to go over the top. We had Falake's dress custom made. We had all the bridesmaids' dresses custom made. All the fabrics came from Nigeria. We worked with one of our vendors in Los Angeles. They were tremendous. And then we had some of the Nigerian women that own these shops in Los Angeles come and help us do all of the head wraps, the specialty head wraps for the wedding. So it was a crazy month of my life, but it looked beautiful, and I couldn't be more proud. And for all the Nigerians that worked on the show, I got a lot of accolades for getting it right, and that meant more to me than anything. That I got it right, because as a costume designer, you just want to do the costumes justice and make sure that you're doing them properly and accurately. So
Right. No, all that hard work and everything you mentioned like shows through the screen, especially on a set like that where you have tons and
yeah.
tons of people in one shot.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
all the background too, all the guests
yeah,
that were there, never mind the actual wedding, but then, the 50 to 75 people we had to dress that were attending the
right.
wedding. So it was the same with the funeral episode as well, very similar in vibe. It's very elaborate, everything matches. So, that was just magnificent as well.
So with that being said, a big episode like that, what does your support team look like?
So I have a big team. I am the costume designer, and then we have what is called a costume supervisor. So that's kind of that's, I would say, the budgeting and crew aspect. So the supervisor handles the budget for me.
Yeah.
It will always keep me informed. We know what our budget is, so we'll talk on a weekly basis. Do we need to ask for more this week for something like a wedding episode? Of course, we have to ask for more, but there might be an episode that's a 1 day episode with 6 characters, so we can give a little money back for
Yeah.
the maybe set design needs it or something. So we always work with production in that, and that's what the supervisor does. And she also manages the crew, hiring the crew. If we need additional labor for it, like the wedding, we needed 5 additional costumers plus specialty head wrap people. So that person kind of handles all of that, as well as any like uniforms that need to be done, or if we need to have things custom made, the supervisor will plan all of that. We'll, book our fittings at the costume rental house or at the tailor shop or at outside sources. So it's the hardest job in the department, I think, kind of managing all of us. Then we have what we call key costumers, and key costumers typically help me shop. They help me with fittings. They run the set costume team.
Yeah.
So usually on big shows, I'll have 2, sometimes 3 key costumers, but typically 2. And then we go into the set costuming land, and these are the costumers that work on set with the talent. They set their costumes in the morning, they maintain the continuity on set.
Yeah.
We have additional set costumers that come in to specifically do background and dress all of the background on the show for the day. And then sometimes, depending on the shows, not typically in half-hour comedy, but we have what you call a wardrobe PA.
Oh,
That is a production assistant in specifically for costumes. The rules are a little stricter now. We all work on union shows, and a PA is a non-union position, so it's a little more strict in terms of what they can do. I think they can do returns, they can help with paperwork. It's a great way to get into the business is to
yeah.
work as a wardrobe PA, and if you can get on a 1 hour series or a feature, it's a great way to meet designers, meet crews, and to try to get in. But obviously have been in the union for 30, almost 35 years now.
Yeah.
I did start in non-union, basically feature films, as a non-union designer, and was thankful enough to get into the union. So, but that's one good way, for people that are interested in working in our business. To work as a PA is a great way. And also to work at any of the costume rental houses.
Right.
Uh, it's a hard job, but you learn a lot. You learn how to size clothing. You learn about different time periods of clothing. It's a great way again to meet people coming in pulling for shows, but also you're learning how to size clothing and how to
Right.
organize clothing and kind of what the needs of designers and supervisors are. So it's a great way to learn as well.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the times, that's the most important part to get yourself involved and just to start to meet the people that are actually out there doing it.
Yeah, another good way, if you're in a big city like New York or Los Angeles, and even Georgia, Atlanta is a great spot for film and TV. Is We have what we call studio services at the major department stores. So at like
Okay.
Nordstrom's, yeah, Bloomingdale's, Macy's, they have a specific department called studio services, and it's for all of us that shop for television and film.
Yeah.
And we open an account through our production, and we go in and we can pull all the stuff that we need for fittings. And they give you 7 days to keep the clothing. You do your fittings, you keep and purchase what you're going to use, and then you return what you're not going to use. So it's a really great, instead of like going with a credit card and buying thousands and thousands and thousands, I
Yeah.
often have sometimes 10 to 15 fittings in a day, and we have to have clothing for all of that. So we shop, Mondays and Tuesdays from the time the store is open to the time the store is closed to get all of our fittings ready. So that makes it easier for us to pull from department stores as opposed to putting on credit cards. And so that's another great way to meet people, to get in and meet all the designers and stylists too.
Yeah.
Stylists typically do more um, like celebrity dressing, music videos, commercials. That's a different part of our union.
Okay.
And it's called styling. It's a little different than costume design, although sometimes people call us both, and sometimes we are both. Sometimes, I call myself a costume designer when I design television shows, but a stylist if I'm styling a celebrity outside of being a character. So I would say styling is more real life, as opposed to costume design is more character and done for television and film. So that's another great way. And a stylist, there's a lot of non-union styling jobs out there. So that's a great way to get in with a stylist, start working with a stylist. Then you get to know the show. I mean, sorry, you get to know the stores, the rental houses, all different sources, fabric stores, notions stores, when you need to custom build and you need to find fabrics and notions. If you're doing science fiction, for example, you can't shop a sci-fi costume at
Right.
Macy's, right? So you
Yeah.
have to then build. So you then have, if you're a sketch artist and you can sketch, you sketch out the costume. If you can't do that, I am a visual, but I can't sketch. So I have a sketch artist. What, like, for example, when we did the wedding, I had a sketch artist do the sketches of those costumes. Then
Okay.
you bring those to the tailor. They make patterns for you, and then you provide the fabric, the notions, all of the things that you would need, the laces, the diamonds, all the bedazzling. You
Right.
have to shop all of that. So that's another whole aspect when you're doing stuff that needs to be custom made. So it's not all just shopping. It often is custom. And if you're doing period pieces, then you're going into rental houses and you're pulling pieces from those time periods. And then often when you're working, with big A-list celebrities, you don't want to put them in an old costume from a rental house. So you'll
Yeah.
use that costume that you've pulled from the rental house that is of that time period, but then you will custom build it new, but to look aged.
Right.
So you'll say, okay, this is, a beautiful Western costume, but we're gonna make an actual skirt and top and all of that. And then you might find a beautiful hat that, that a milliner might make for you. So it's a it's a little all over the place, but a lot of areas you can go into for sure.
Yeah, there's just so many aspects to your department. And
Yeah,
we did meet on the show, Mom.
we did. Yep.
And How
Yeah.
would you compare a show like Bob Hart Abishola to something like Mom?
Yeah, so Mom was a contemporary show, and it revolved around these seven women that went to AA meetings together, and they were friends. And obviously, Alice and Jenny's character and Anna were mother and daughter.
Yeah,
Um, and they were lower income on the show, and struggling a bit. So we wanted to make sure that we stayed true to that. So we're not putting them in Prada and Gucci. We're
yeah,
putting more realistic clothing, what they could afford to try to make it real. And on that show, we often reused pieces to show, in the age old times of television, you were never supposed to repeat a costume. That was a no-no. Like in the Aaron Spelling world, when I
yeah.
signed the OC a long time ago now, but we never reused a costume. That was like a flat no-no. But in that show, it made sense because they wouldn't be able to afford a new outfit every day. So we reused their jeans, we reused tops, always reused shoes. So that the difference of those two is again the Nigerian culture of it all and doing specialty costuming as
Right.
opposed to just contemporary modern day costuming and understanding what characters you're dressing. I think one of my examples I always use for really great costume design, as simple as it is Seinfeld,
Okay.
because you always knew that Jerry Seinfeld wore a polo shirt, jeans, and Reebok sneakers.
Yeah,
And you always knew that Kramer wore the high-waisted pants and the crazy fabulous shirts. But it was consistent and the designer never varied from what their character's look was. And we are television, it's not real. So you want to good character, you want to make sure that there is a look that runs throughout
yeah.
the series. So sometimes it's as simple as a polo shirt, jeans, and Reeboks because that's what he wore. So I always love that as an example of just great costume design because you think of that show and you can remember what each character wore. And I
Yeah,
think
exactly.
well done.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you can easily picture like an episode, or you can picture
Yep.
what Elaine's wearing or something like that.
Exactly. You just always, it just, you go right to it. And I think that's a testament to good costume design.
I did want to bring up your new show, Leanne. Uh,
Yeah. Mhm.
what is it like to, on day one, for example, to work on a brand new show that you're starting to get to know?
Yeah. It's challenging
Yeah.
because we're all starting in the same place and we are trying to again create characters. And who is this character in this particular case? This was based on the comedy of Leanne Morgan. So we wanted to make sure we stayed true to who she is as a person, but she's also again a character on a show, even though it's based on her comedy. It's loosely based on her comedy. So this is a woman who's about to get divorced. She's got children, she's got grandchildren. She's from the South. She's from Tennessee, from Knoxville, Tennessee. So I wanted to give the show a little bit of a look of some Southern flair, I guess, for lack of a better word. So we wanted to make sure we got some color in there. But also in talking to Leanne, it's not like what you think of like your grandmother and floral. Like we wanted to make sure that we kept it modern. So we talked a lot about that. But we also wanted to make sure that we were getting across that, she's a grandmother, she's a mother, she's getting divorced. There was a little bit of sadness to that and trying to pick herself up and get going again. So it's always a little bit tough coming out of the gate, as we go through the scripts and as the writers start to develop these characters too, we have to kind of follow suit with that. So once we got going, it was super fun, but it's like that on every show that you start, and you really do see from the beginning of a series,
Mhm.
once the story starts to take place, then everything else seems to kind of take place. So and by the end of it, I mean, we had a ball, and she's just great. And Kristen Johnston plays her sister, who I also worked with on Mom. Uh,
Yeah.
And Kristen's character, is also from the South, but she traveled a little bit. She lived in Chicago. So we gave her a little bit of an edgier look just to give them some difference as well, because she had traveled and lived in the city and was a little more rough around the edges.
Yeah.
So we made sure that her character portrayed that.
Well, when it comes to designing for each character, who do you collaborate the most with?
I would say the actor themselves, and also the writers, the
Yeah.
creator of the show. You definitely want to make sure, before any show, I go in with boards for each character,
Mm.
to give my thoughts as to what I think it is, but it opens up room for discussion,
Yeah.
as for what they think it is. And it's very important visually. It can be difficult because what you think is blue might somebody else might think is turquoise, and it's you have to really show. I think anything visual, you have to show what you're doing, and then when someone sees a costume from head to toe, they'll say, oh, right, okay, well, I was thinking that it should be more a little bit like this, and I see where you went with that, but I think it should be a little more conservative, or I was expecting this to be a little more colorful. So I think that when you design costumes and you start showing your fitting photos, then you have a place to go from. And I think that's really important. And so when we start, I always talk to the actors first, where
Yeah.
they're coming from with their characters. What they think their history is. They might have some notes for me that they've talked to the creator about that they can pass along to me to help with that. And then we kind of go from there. And once I've had that discussion, then I do a huge fitting out of the gate, a 2 hour fitting typically. And we really go through what shapes look good, what colors look good, then kind of build more, character wise, what this means. And then we kind of have a starting place and then we build from there. So it's quite a process, it's
Yeah.
definitely a big process for sure.
Well, how do you handle notes or last minute requests?
Yeah. Last minute requests can be crazy in the world of sitcoms because I do what they call a rack check on
Yeah.
this show. It was Wednesdays. We shoot Thursday and Friday. So after rack check, they script and after the run throughs, which is when they run through the show for us, there might be a big change and they might say, hey, we wanted her, to be in a blouse where, you show her sweat stains.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, she needs sweat stains. So I need to find a fabric that shows that on camera. So you can't do a black or a navy. You have to do a lighter color that will show that sweat stain. And then, that may have come in at the last second and we need now multiples because we
Right.
have it has to start dry, then she gets wet. So we have to have 4 to 6 of those blouses. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're all running to the stores trying to find multiples of this costume. So last
Right.
minute changes happen all the time in the world of comedy because it's comedy and they see what's working, what's not working on the daily. And then
Yeah.
sometimes it falls down on us. Or if we just have a stunt that we know about where the roof comes in and, the water comes pouring down, then we know that costume needs to be multiplied 6 times. And
Right.
so once we've gotten approval, and then the trick is, right, you have rack check on Wednesday, but you shoot on Thursday.
Mm.
So if you have to make sure you have 6 of every single piece, you have to get ahead of that a little bit, but you also have to have choices for them. So often you're multiplying 4 to 5 outfits as options
Yeah.
to make sure that you have what you need. And then whatever they don't choose all has to go back to the store. So when you have stunts and things like that, it can get a little hair raising at times, but that's also the fun of it. And we have a great
Really.
department and we kind of, we know how if we need to shop for multiples, you're going to Macy's and Bloomie's and Nordstrom's where you can find the multiples boots on the ground, as opposed to ordering stuff online. Because ordering stuff online, you can't guarantee it's going to get there in
Right.
time. So, and that's been challenging after the pandemic. The stores just don't have the merchandise that they used to. So we're often forced to shop online, but we can't
Yeah.
always get in in time for a show what we need. So that can be a little bit challenging for
Yeah,
us.
I could definitely see that. Well,
Yeah,
I wanted to talk about how your journey started. What was it like to book your
sure.
first couple of shows or features?
Yeah, so I went to the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City, and I was bartending to put myself through school. And I had a couple of writers that I used to serve drinks to, and one of the writers introduced me to my first costume designer, knowing that I was potentially interested in working in costumes.
Yeah.
And she was Los Angeles. I was in New York at the time, and she called me and said, Roger gave me your information. I have a show down in Virginia Beach. Would you like to come and work as my assistant? And I think I was 24 years old. I remember screaming, thinking like, this is it. And I moved down
Yeah.
to Virginia and worked on my first miniseries, which was a four-part miniseries with lots of stunts. It was an action miniseries, so I learned a lot. I worked for $100 a day, 16 hours a day for eight
Oh,
months on end. And then she ended up bringing me to Los Angeles, and that's when she brought me to do. I think my first movie was Albino Alligator, which was directed by Kevin Spacey. It was his
oh,
first
okay.
directing.
Yeah.
And it was just God, Faye Dunaway, John Spencer. It was amazing, amazing cast. And it was an independent film.
Mhm.
And I think we shot for 4 weeks or something. And
Yeah.
then I was lucky enough, I got into the union in Los Angeles on a show that turned union, but continued to do non-union for a while. I worked on Magnolia with Paul Thomas
Oh,
Anderson, and
yes.
yeah, I worked with Quentin Tarantino on Jackie Brown.
Yeah.
Did a lot. I did Daylight, which was a huge action feature directed by Rennie Harlan. So that's kind of where my career started. And I was an
Yeah.
assistant working on set in those days. And then slowly kind of worked my way up and ended up working on a commercial with Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen's
Oh,
personal
okay.
stylist, Judy Schwartz. She's amazing.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, do you want to work? We're doing some TV shows with the girls, and we're doing all these straight to video movies. Would you like to work with me on those?" And I said, "Yes, I'd love to." And so she would always do Mary Kate and Ashley. I would assist her with the girls, but then I would design all the surrounding characters. So she
Great.
really gave me a great break and,
Yeah.
working next to her and with her, but also getting to do my own character. So it really got my courage up. And then after that, I think I went on to the OC and became the designer on the OC. And then I've just stayed in television since then.
Wow.
It's been a long trek, but a fun
It
one.
sounds like it. Yeah, I know. That's exactly what the dream is, that you just get to work with all these really creative people that motivate you, like you said, and
Yeah.
inspire you to kind of develop your own identity.
Yeah, and take you under their wings. I had a lot of people
Yeah.
that did that for me, and I've done it for a lot of my team. I really feel proud of that, and I always try to help where I can. It's a little more difficult in this climate
Right.
because our work has just plummeted right now for a variance of reasons, starting with the pandemic and then the writers' strike and the actors' strikes, and that
Yeah.
we're really getting much more into streaming. Linear television is really non-existent now. So for all of us that have worked in network television, that really doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
Um, so it's been challenging. And I think we were talking briefly about that, just the ups and downs. If you're going to be in this business, you do have to have a little bit of a thick skin because
Yeah.
there might be like months that you don't work, or in some cases, like during the strike, I think I didn't work for eight months. I have never gone more than a month or two without working, but in this climate, I'm not doing network TV anymore. Leanne is a streamed show for Netflix.
Right.
We did 16 episodes, not 23. So that's tough. That's a lot. That's 8 to 10 weeks of work that I don't have now. So
Mm.
you really have to get creative, save, and just I think be a little more open. If a commercial comes along, you'll say yes to that when maybe you
Yeah.
didn't and you just have to kind of, keep yourself working. However, and I have a second business. I have a candle company and I do that on the side.
Yeah.
It's not much, but it keeps me busy and I love to do that. And it just keeps me in a creative space when I'm not in Los Angeles working. So
Yeah, Hollywood and Maine, I remember.
Hollywood and Maine. Yep, I know.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely what I wanted to bring up because we've just found ourselves to have to understand that we're not in the same place that we were 5, 10 years ago. And
Right.
so especially for newcomers, what advice would you give those people?
I say that just understand that it might not be an easy path in this climate, but
Yeah,
also don't give up. I mean, it's a huge business, and I think what starting out now is just different than when I started out.
yeah,
And I came from, feature films, independent feature films into network television, and now your jobs are going to be streaming. And it's just going to be and unless you get into features, of course, but even
yeah,
that, I mean, even features are being shot for streamers now and not
yeah,
necessarily for the theater per se. So I just think it's just a different climate right now.
yeah,
But again, when you work in the rental houses, when you work at studio services, you meet people that there's probably a million different things that are going on that I'm not even aware of, and
yeah,
you can do music videos, again, commercial work, all of that. There's a lot you can do, and it's just trying to find a path. The one thing I will say that I think is helpful and good advice is, and I was a little all over the place when I started, but once I got into television and knew that that's really what I loved was contemporary television, comedy in particular, I then stayed on that course. And I think
yeah,
it does help to kind of, choose where you'd like to go and then try to stay the course with that and meet the people that can help further. Yeah, and just try to find some mentors, some people that can help you. I do that. I have a lot of kids that I text back and forth with, and they keep in touch with me. And one's in New York right now. We're trying to see if we can get her something going on there. And
yeah,
I do that as much as I can. There's just not a lot of work right now, but there is a power of just keeping in touch with people. Never be shy. I know I always tell people I get a lot of like friends, kids that text me, and I always say, just continue following up with me. Don't be shy. I'm not going to
yeah,
reach out to you because I'm busy, but just keep reaching out and keep in touch because you never know that one time you text, I'm like, hey, you know what? We need a few extra days. I think I can get you on as a PA or something
yeah,
like that, or come, stay a week and come to set with me and I can kind of show you the ropes. You can come get a tour. Warner Brothers is great about that. I can bring people on for the day. We can go down to the rental house and take a look. So yeah,
yeah,
just and anyone in the business, we're all friends in this business and we all help each other. And I sometimes say, hey, I'll write to Franny or John Shafter and say, I know someone that's in, art design or whatever. Can you
yeah.
help them somehow? So we all do that for each other as well. So it's a nice network to have.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the first step to just be able to start talking to everybody that's already on the shows and just to
Yeah.
get even to get advice or to get some kind of conversation going, to get
Yep.
your ideas moving. Because
Yes.
the worst part is just standing still and not making the decision.
Yeah. Reach out. I often get people DMing me
Yeah,
that are looking for an opportunity possibly. And I always write back, or
yeah,
people that DM me about, hey, I saw this costume. I saw you were the designer. And that's a nice way. I think, the social media is great. LinkedIn is great for that as well. You can
right.
reach out and I get a lot of people. So I love that. I'm like, be bold, be strong. That is you have to be strong to get into this business. It is a tough business. We work very hard. We're under a lot of pressure and we're a big team, a big crew of 150 people that have to put a show together every
Yeah,
week. You have to be strong to do that. So out of the gate, be strong, get your resumes out there. Just even if it's like, hey, I have this limited experience, but I'm really motivated and really excited. We can hopefully help with that in
Yeah,
some manner, you know.
exactly it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Karla. I appreciate the
Welcome.
conversation.
Oh, it's so good to see you on Zoom, and hopefully I'll see you in real life soon enough. I hope so. So
Yeah, I'll
cross
see you on the
fingers.
back lot.
All right. I love you, Hugo. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.